Thank you for watching Rider Nation Station's presentation of Third and Long, brought to you by these following fine sponsors: Buffalo Wild Wings, Miller's Funeral Home, Eagles Lodge 767, Rabel's Auto Service, Plus One Professionals, All Glaze Equipment Rental, Midway Trailers, American Legion Post 323, Albert Sporting Goods, Family Audiology, Speckman Automotive, Kogi Plumbing and Heating, Spees Chiropractic, Varsity Lanes, Minster Bank, VFW Post 9289, and Gwinneri Pizzeria.
Well, hello everyone, and we welcome you to Rider Nation Station. And tonight we want to unveil a brand new program. It's called Third and Long. And we're joined with former Roughrider coaches Roger Duncan, Denny Long, Denny Vossler. Greg Freewald has been invited to join us but was unable to make this initial telecast, but Greg will join us down the road. And gentlemen, first of all, thanks a lot for joining us on this inaugural program called Third and Long.
Well, we're welcome to be here. Somebody mentions Defiance, and the first thing that comes in your mind is the long bus trip. And so when we get there, we try to get there early and allow the kids to walk up and down the field a little bit. And so as the kids were doing that, they noticed there were a lot of anthills. And so Coach Bachman is over talking to their head coach, and I bet a dozen of our kids went over and said, "Coach, there's anthills all over the field. Coach, there's anthills all over the field." And so, he's trying to say, go away, get in the locker room and stuff like that, because this is their head coach. And so as we get ready to take the field, pregame talks, Coach Bachman starting his, and Coach Long and Coach Freewald have to go to the press box. And so we decided, well, we just happened, I would tag with them to go down this hallway right next to their locker room. And we heard that this coach was a large talker. And sure enough, he's in there to go real loud, saying, "Now you got to watch out for the trap. Now you got to watch out for the sweep." And they're not worried about you. They're worried about the damn anthills.
Well, each week we want to try to bring everybody different thoughts about the upcoming opponent, Defiance. So we've asked the coaches to give your first impressions of Defiance.
I don't know a whole lot about this year's Defiance team other than the fact that they won last week, and it's first Western Buckeye League game, and we have to go there. And like Raj said, it's a long bus trip, and that's always tough to get off of a long bus ride and then play a football game. So that's where I would say I would be on this game.
My impression is we never played well against Defiance. I think there were 20 years when I was coaching, we played Defiance, and they weren't very good. I think they only had 3 winning seasons in a 20-year. But we never played well, and we blamed it first on the long bus trip, but then they would come down here the same bus trip, and we didn't play well against them again. And we never did quite figure out what it was. It may just be a matter of geography. I know once at a coaches meeting, we were talking, what do we have to do to get the kids excited about Defiance? And I said, well, maybe we ought to tell them where it is, because I would guess there's nobody in that room that had ever been to Defiance. And I think I've only been downtown Defiance 3 times. And it's a little hard then. We know where Salina is, and we know where Wapak is, and we know where the Lima schools are, but it's just a name, Defiance, and it's just pretty hard to get excited about a name on a map.
And to add to what Denny said there, like I said, Defiance wasn't very good for a lot of years, and I think maybe our coaching aggressiveness wasn't quite as intense as it was against some opponents. But I think that all changed late in our careers when Jerry Beauty came to Defiance, because he brought the level of that program real quickly up to a top-tier program there in the league. So, that Defiance took on an altogether different level of intensity when Jerry came to town.
Greg Freewald said that he left a voicemail with Doug, and he shared it with me. He says he can remember when Defiance entered into the Western Buckeye League. They weren't initially one of the teams that was in the Western Buckeye League. And he said there wasn't a lot of teams in the Western Buckeye League that wanted Defiance to come into the league. Can you explain something about that? Because they were a large school at the time, and they thought maybe they was going to dominate most major sports, and they didn't want them in the Western Buckeye League to begin with.
Yeah, I recall that discussion, and we were kind of against it because it was such a long bus trip. And that's the only reason. Competitive-wise, we thought that they would we thought they would be better than what they were when they start. But like Denny said, when Jerry got there, they became quite competitive. And the year that they won the state championship, that team would rank up with anybody else that you could ever imagine that went through the WBL. They were very good. I can remember being up there a few years before that, and I'm not sure Jerry was there or not, but we were down to winning the league, but we had to win one of the last two games, and so we were in the process of getting beat by Defiance, and that's when we had Ronnie Keith and Ricky Louth, and both of those, Ricky being our starting fullback, got beat up in the first half and was laying on the shower room floor at halftime. Ronnie Keith had a bad thigh muscle, and so we had to come out and try to beat Defiance, and those two guys, I remember, really showed Roughrider spirit because they both got off the deck. Ricky we never gave the ball to, but he was faking the trap and everybody was worried about that. Ronnie broke a long one and really screwed up his leg really well. So the next week we go to Van Wert. We've got Van Wert and Delphus left. Delphus was not very good, Van Wert, but it was a pretty good team. And we had a whole new backfield. I mean, one of my ends, Brian Haney, once upon a time had been a quarterback. He was a quarterback. One of the Finke boys, who was one of my ends, became a halfback. And so for a put-together team, we were all right. Van Wert beat us, but then the next week we beat Delphus and won the league. So just one of those strange things, like Denny was saying, that happened at Defiance.
When Defiance entered the league, 73, we were concerned not only because they were the biggest school in the league, and I think they were at that time, and maybe they are yet, but they seemed to have everything going for them. It seemed to be a really clean, nice town. They had all kinds of great facilities. They were good in all sports. They had a tremendous wrestling program. They were good in track. They were good in basketball. Baseball was exceptional. But then they haven't been able to, until lately, put it together. The other thing they have going for them, they're the only school in the league that has a college football team in town. And it seemed to me that to be a tremendous advantage as far as building interest in football. These little kids, elementary school, junior high, can go down on Saturday afternoon and watch the big guys play and then dream and all that. They did just seem to have everything going, but I never could figure that out. Every once in a while I get a call from some coaching friend when Defiance would have an opening in the head coaching, which happened regularly, and they would say, can I win there? Why can't they win there? Can it be done? I don't know why not. I can't think of a single reason why not. I don't see any real negative. So yeah, it's always been an enigma to me as to why they haven't dominated.
You know, and we, when they decided to bring Defiance in, we were really at a disadvantage because, you know, geographically, we're the southern school in the league. You know, most of the schools in our league are around Lima area, and you got OG and Van Wert, and they're all a heck of a lot closer to Defiance than what we were. So you had all those schools saying, hey, it ain't going to be that long of a trip for us. So, you know, we were kind of left out there on a limb talking about the distance because it wasn't near as bad a distance from them. And so, you know, that they were a welcome addition for our league for those schools. So, you know, I think we kind of got outvoted and out-influenced because of the distance thing, you know, which is what we were kind of hanging our hat on. But, you know, it is what it is.
You know, one of the guys that I remember way back in the early 70s, and I talked to Coach Duncan here prior to airing, is that they had a kid back in the day by the name of Dave Preston. And you probably had to defend him. He was one of their top running backs. Dave later went on, played at Bowling Green, had a great college career at Bowling Green, then later went on and played for the Denver Broncos in the NFL. Do you remember Dave Preston?
Yeah, he played for Defiance when they were, I think after Jerry got there. And I think, like I said, when Jerry came to Defiance, he'd made Defiance a very, very different animal than what they were in the past. They were very organized on defense, and their offense was very good. And, I was talking to Raj this morning at breakfast there. We kind of meet every Wednesday. It's been 30 years since we've coached together. And, it's a pretty long time, but I can remember 1992 going to Defiance, and we'd lost a game early in the year. And Jerry'd been there about 3 years, and Jerry had it rolling. And Defiance was very, very good. And we limped into Defiance. We had Mike Elston, who was limping with an ankle, and Luke Kleinance limping with an ankle. And so we had their whole backfield limping, and I think we were like 5-0 or 5-1 at the time. We'd lost in overtime to Bath or something like that. And Defiance was, 6-0, hardly been scored upon. And we opened that game, and I think we ran a wing-back counter once against them, pulling the tackle, which we don't ever do. And we scored, and I think an Eaton boy picked up a ball on the ground and ran it in for a touchdown. And pretty soon it was 21-0, and we ended up winning like 40-some to 7 or 14. And I remember we all looked at each other walking off the field and had no idea how in the heck we ever beat them the way we beat them. And Defiance went on to be 9-1 and was a great team. And we finished 9-1, and because we were, we'd beaten them in the league, we got in the playoffs, and I don't think they did. And of course, then we went on, and Mike got healthy, and Luke got healthy, and we ended up playing in Massillon and winning that last state title. We won 92. But like I said, Defiance became an altogether different animal. And then I think 2 years later, Jerry took his team, won the state title, and he had it rolling back then. And they were a very tough team to handle when Jerry came to town.
Yeah, and Jerry had been at Van Wert prior to going to Defiance. And we didn't know anything about Jerry when he first took the Van Wert job. Remember at Van Wert, I'm an old Van Wert person. We're up on the hill, and we always came down the hill to get on the field. And so we were kind of standing on the hill, and we were watching their pregame warm-up. And especially on defense, they did exactly what we thought they were going to do. And we kind of looked at each other and said, look, they're running the schemes that we thought they were going to, and we were in shock because they're not going to do that pregame and then do it in the game, but they did. And so for the first year or so, we kind of had a handle on them because we kind of had a spy. We just stood there and watched them. But then Jerry, they all got their act together, and Van Wert was just getting ready to become quite good, and Jerry took the Defiance job because he thought, I think, that they could be a lot more solid throughout the years. And I know Van Wert was just shocked and really upset.
Negatively, and coaches sometimes can't remember very many of their victories, but they sure remember the defeats. And I would say, in my mind, 1984 or 5, somewhere in there, we got beat by the worst team we ever got beat by. They were bad, and they beat us. We were average. We had a winning season, but we did everything we could to lose the game, apparently. And I guess preparing for a game this week or any other name, that's one question that coaches have to ask. How could we possibly lose to this team? Because some teams are really bad. Well, you can. All you have to do is beat yourself. Penalties, fumbles, turnovers, blown coverages, missed assignments. I think every team has probably, during the season, one quarter where they're just terrible. And anybody could beat them. Even the good teams will have a quarter where they just stink. And if you put 2 or 3 of those quarters together, and you can get beat by a junior high team. And that's what you have to remind the kids of. Even though it's a team that hasn't been traditionally a powerhouse, you can beat yourself, and you got to work on those things during practice.
Voss, you said something earlier a moment ago that, it's been 30 years since you have coached together. But when you coached together, you almost coached for 30 years together. And you don't see that today. You see coaches changing, but back in the 70s when you guys coached together, Jim Elshire put together a staff that stayed together. Jim Daly at Elida put together a staff that stayed together for quite a long time. And because I believe that you stayed together as a staff for so long, that dictated the success of this Rider program.
I just wanted to add real quickly here. Coach Vossler and I didn't coach together for 30 years. He was playing some of those years I was coaching.
That's right.
Yeah, I think me and Ding only coached together 20 years, but to repeat what you said, yeah, you know, and the fact that we were together so long, you know, our coaching got easier. You know, it really, honest to God, did. I can remember when I started. Of course, these guys had been at it for a while already, you know, 8-10 years, and you know, we had long meetings, and we'd meet 2 or 3 days before we start practice, and we'd go over all the stuff we had to do. But boy, when we got into after I'd been there 20 years, you know, we'd meet we'd eat for an hour the night before the first practice and figure out what we were going to do, and maybe we'd go out that afternoon before that and paint fields or some little nonsense like that. And then we'd meet for an hour that evening, then we'd go out and practice. You know, everybody kind of knew what they were going to do, and I think too, funny, when I started, you know, we had a real thick playbook, and Skip had a lot of plays. And you know, we worked on all that stuff during the preseason and stuff. But you know, the longer I was there, the playbook got smaller and smaller and smaller, and it became more about not what you did, but how you did it. And so our execution, you know, we worked so much more on execution, and not about X's and O's and trying to find some fancy Dan play. It was, you know, we know what we got to do. We just got to make sure we do it right. Yeah. And I think that was our secret, is that we made it simple. Yeah, and it became simple for us, and we tried to make it simple for the players.
Right, and, along that line, when we got into the extended season, a lot of times it would just be crappy outside, and you'd look outside, and we'd practice in the gym. And the best practices were back in the gym, because we went back to step, 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 form up, and then we'd play a day or two later, and the execution had improved 25%, and only because, you know, outside you could get away with, you know, and you can't watch everything, but in the gym it's under a microscope, and we did everything, and we did. We went back to basic steps and form fitting, and both blocking and tackling, and it helped us tremendously. To go back to the extension, Coach Long and I have been together since '67. That's when I came. I was the puppy in 1967. The three coaches were Coach Bachman, Coach Long, and some guy named Duncan, me. And I remember one afternoon came over to Coach Long's classroom with my brother, and the four of us, Skip, Ding, and my brother and I, we had diagrams and football plays on every inch of the chalkboard that it lived and existed in his classroom, and then explained it. And Skip explained things, how he wanted you to teach the guards, how he wanted you to teach the tackles, every step, every move, everything. And he was a tremendous fundamentalist and a tremendous diagnostician. And that was part, and then he ingrained that in us. Denny Vossler, too many Denny's here, was a sophomore in high school. Coach Freewalt was a sophomore, junior in college. And so when they got in, just like Denny said, we just fit them into the process, and here's what we do on day one, here's what we do on day two, here's what we do on day three. It's amazing. Yeah.
You know, one thing that makes a football program really successful, it snowballs. If you get things going, then you don't have 5-hour practices, and then you don't have 6-hour meetings, and then the coaches don't quit. And you do retain coaches for 10 and 20 and 30 years. But you have to get to the point where it's so easy that we can read each other's minds, and we know what we're going to do, and we talk all the time, all day long, all summer long. And so, yeah, it does snowball. So if you get things going, and then it just keeps going. And you know, so that's true at any level. It's true with the pros. It's true with the college teams. It's easier than starting from scratch. And if you have to start from scratch, so those are tough 4 or 5 years. It's tough on the wives, it's tough on the family, it's tough on the coaches. And a lot of them, then, they're selling insurance and things.
Yeah, and I remember when Roger was talking about the fundamentals that Skip used to implement, we used to roll out I don't know, it's a canvas on the ground. It had your 0, 2, 4, and 6 on one side, 1, 3, 5, and 7, and we're going to do a 6-0 trap. And he taught step 1, everybody would take a step. Step 2, where was your second step? Step 3, where was your next step? And I don't know if that was the case, Zach, when you played, how you learned your plays at that point in time, but fundamentals was the keys. Fundamentals would win ball games.
Absolutely. As a garden center, that was the first thing you learned, was where you needed to throw out, where that first step went to, where the second step went into the line, where your eyes were supposed to be looking towards, and then get your flapper ready to lock up with blocking. So absolutely started in 8th grade and continued into 9th grade, freshman football, and on into high school. So it's good to hear that hasn't changed in 40, 50 years.
Nope,
I thought maybe while we're talking about that sort of schematic, is there anything about Defiance, offensive or defensive scheme-wise, did they stick to something over years? Did Jerry Beauty change that over the years? Was it pretty much the same? Because that seems to be we know St. Mary's has an identity and that sort of thing, but I'm racking my brain not thinking of Defiance as necessarily having that same type of identity with their offense and defense.
I think, Jerry ran a lot of different offenses when he was at Defiance, but Jerry hung his hat on his defense. He had an offense that didn't try to turn the ball over, and he'd hang his hat on the defense. As far as Defiance today, I really don't know, but I'm sure they're in some sort of a spread. That seems to be what everybody in America is doing right now. They got their quarterback in a shotgun, and they're maybe they'll have a 2-back set, maybe just a 1-back set or something like that, But I've always, the football's a pretty simple game. If you get your body in the right spot and you got the right pad level, you can just be about successful in anything you're going to do. And, I think that's, if you're going to run the ball, that's the key to success. There's a lot of ways to do that, but if you get your people in the right spot, and they got them in the right pad level, then I think you got a better chance of being successful. And I think that's our challenge. I thought St. Mary's last Friday night looked pretty good coming off the ball. And I think they're just like any team in America that runs the ball. You got to work on your footwork and you got to work on your pad level. And if you improve in those areas of the game, then I think you're going to be pretty successful. And I think that'll be the key to the game. And I think just like our key to the game Friday night will probably be the fact that we need to probably be able to get outside. I think when we were coaching, we'd go into the week and we'd put their defense up on the board, and then we'd all kind of sit around and scratch our heads and decide how in the heck we're going to get outside them. And if we could get outside them, when you're a running football team, you don't stretch teams vertically, you stretch them horizontally. And so what you have to be able to do is make the defense spread out. And you make them spread out by making them defend the outside. You make them defend 50 yards of the field. And then when you can do that, then you can attack them up inside. And I think that's what we had to do. I thought we did that very well Friday night. We got outside enough early, and then we started hammering them up inside. And I think they were concerned about the outside, and then they got softer inside against London. And I think that'll be our challenge Friday night against Defiance. And it'll be all about, we got to move the ball. That's the name of the game. We put the ball, if you're a running football team, you control the ball, you're going to have success. That's just the way it is. And not only that, you wear the other team down. And these guys, you don't beat people up with your defense, you beat them up with your offense. And if you're good, and Skip knew that. Skip was a master at that. He took control of the game with the offense, and then he made it easy on our defense. It's easy to play defense with a 28-point lead. That's just the way life is. And it's easy to play defense too when your offense runs the ball for 12 plays.
Right.
The defense sits on the sideline.
Like Denny said, getting there, and speed has to be important. Not necessarily speed in your backfield, but speed in your offensive line. They got to jump people. They got to be there before the defense can react. I always would catch hallelujah because my tackles would have a hell of a time getting down to that linebacker. And so they'd want to get closer. No. because now you got this much room to get your shoulder pads through. Well, you can't get your shoulder pads through there. You got to get a tiny bit wider so you got room to run. But it's got to be fast. It has to be fast. And we used to, we had a kid named Kevin Axe who was a good linebacker in whole line drill. I would always chuckle when one of my tackles even would nick him, because he knew a good linebacker steps up toward the football. And if you stand there, you're going to get knocked right out. Well, he went on to OU, and he was a backup linebacker at OU, and they went to Penn State. He made a traveling squad. He was so excited. Well, the linebacker in front of him got hurt, and so Kevin's in there, and he took a hesitation before he took a step up, and he said this great big sweep just took me, and I was on that sideline. And so the offense has to be fast, and it has to be consistent. To get a little bit off our offense, to Defiance, probably the things that we've talked about, the consistency of staff, the consistency of program, the consistency of techniques, has been to their demise, because they've changed coaches every 2 or 3 years. And if somebody can establish a thing like Elshire had at Wapak, and Jim Daly had at Elida, and we had here, then they've got a better chance. But I think when we're still learning their system and stuff like that, strong teams like St. Mary's have a tremendous advantage. Tremendous advantage.
It always amuses me. Everybody talks about offense because it's fun, I guess. And this last week, I've been talking offense, other people, and we do it on Saturday and Sunday too with the college and pros. But if you check in all sports at all levels, it boils down to defense. In baseball, I'll count pitching as defense. We scored 42 points. That should win you a ball game. It really should. So I think the thing that I'm more concerned about is our defense right now. And a lot of it's tackling. We can talk about razzle-dazzle and different shooting and firing and so on, but the big plays that London broke last week were mostly missed tackles. The one sweep, we had 2 kids miss a tackle, and that little jet screen out in the flat, we missed tackles. Boss said it's a pretty simple game. It is. If you don't miss any tackles in a game, you're probably got a good shot at winning the thing.
Block, tackle, hang on to the football.
Right, and tackling is all about, here again, it's about, getting your body under control and getting your head up and breaking down and, and that kind of stuff, making contact, wrap up. It's a fundamental thing. It honest to God is in a lot of cases. Now, some cases you'll get beat by speed, and that there you can't do a whole lot about it. But if you got your hands on them, and you get your body, if you get your hands on them and you got your body in the right shape and your head up, you stand a good chance of making a tackle. And then to get away from Defiance and all that, I'll tell you what, I walked in here today, and I'm very impressed with our facilities. We got a nice stadium, we really do, and I'm sitting here in the locker room, and cripe's sakes, it's very nice and it's air conditioned, and football's come a long way. And I would like to thank the voters of St. Mary's for helping out and providing us with this. I think this is a great facility, great experience for our kids here in St. Mary's, and that's what it's all about. I mean, winning and losing is sure, winning's great, and you don't like to lose, but I think we can all take pride when we walk into the stadium on Friday night and look around and see what we got in these locker rooms and the school out here. I'll tell you, it's just a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be a Roughrider when you walk in here and see this. It honest to God is, and I'd just like to thank the people of St. Mary's for providing this for our kids and our community.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of where I am on this whole thing.
Absolutely. Well, we could probably talk for hours, and we're going to do so, but we're going to do it in different segments across the season. So 3rd and long will continue. We want to thank you gentlemen for being here. We're going to do it again. We'll talk Defiance this week. Next week we'll talk about Wapak and some of the memories that you've had as far as the Wapak Redskin rivalry is concerned, and Skip Bachman, Jim Elshire, and we'll talk about that next week. Zach, you have anything to say as we close? So that's going to do it for our inaugural show of Third and Long. We'll be back next week with another episode of Third and Long. We hope you join us. So long, everyone.
Thank you for watching Rider Nation Station's presentation of Third and Long, brought to you by these following fine sponsors: Buffalo Wild Wings, Miller's Funeral Home, Eagles Lodge 767, Rabel's Auto Service, Plus One Professionals, All Glaze Equipment Rental, Midway Trailers, American Legion Post 323, Albert Sporting Goods, Family Audiology, Speckman Automotive, Kogi Plumbing and Heating, Spees Chiropractic, Varsity Lanes, Minster Bank, VFW Post 9289, and Gwinneri Pizzeria. Thanks for watching another episode of Rider Nation Station. Help us help you by subscribing on YouTube or following us on Facebook.